Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dietary management in pancreatitis. Uh, Before going for the pancreatitis, we will see what is the pancreas and what are its functions, which are ultimately affected due to inflammation. Pancreas is basically a long, flat gland that is situated behind the stomach in the upper abdomen. So this is basically the location where this is found, and it has both endocrine and exocrine function. Uh, it produces enzymes which help in the digestion, as well as it also produces hormone which help in the metabolism of carbohydrates. I'm talking about the uh, insulin and glucagon. These are basically acinar cells. Acinar cells, these are tiny globule, rounded lobules. Basically, these are the smallest secreting portion of a gland, which are meant for the secretion of pancreatic juice, which mainly comprised of enzymes. Pancreatic juice is basically a colorless alkaline liquid, and it is composed of water, salt, and among the salts, the main one is sodium chloride and sodium bicarbonate. The purpose of these salts is to neutralize the acetic chyme. When after digestion, the chyme is poured in the duodenum, it is basically highly acidic. So it's essential to neutralize this acetic chyme with the help of sodium chloride and sodium bicarbonate, so that the enzymes contributed by the liver, contributed by the pancreas, as well as the intestine, they may work well for the digestion of the protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Exocrine secretion of pancreas is basically poured in the duodenum portion of the small intestine. Uh, this is basically the first portion of small intestine through which pancreatic duct enters. Pancreas also has group of cells which have no duct, and basically they produce endocrine secretions. Endocrine secretions, the example one is insulin and glucagon. These are the secretions which are directly poured into the blood. So just for your kind information, uh, exocrine tissues, basically uh, pancreas perform both functions as exocrine as well as endocrine. 95% pancreas has exocrine tissues, and in most of the cases, pancreatic cancer develop basically from these exocrine tissues, whereas only 1 to 2% endocrine tissues are there to produce endocrine secretions. Uh, Exocrine pancreas secretes enzymes into the digestive tract, which help in the breakdown of fats and proteins, whereas the endocrine pancreas secretes hormones like glucagon and insulin directly into the bloodstream, and these help in the maintenance or control of the blood sugar levels. When there is insufficient production of insulin, then um, due to uh, improper metabolism of sugars, uh, and health issue is disturbed, which is known as diabetes. These are basically 6 enzymes which are present in the pancreatic juice. 4 enzymes like trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase, and pancreatopeptidase. These are meant for the digestion of protein. And these enzymes are highly specific in nature, and they act on certain carboxylic groups which are provided by different amino acids, and ultimately convert them into peptones and amino acids. So in case of trypsin, it helps in the release of amino acids like arginine, lysine, and in case of chymotrypsin, tyrosine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, methionine. Similarly, in case of pancreatopeptidases, uh, these act on bonds adjacent to the neutral amino acid residues. The overall purpose is the breakdown of complex protein into simple ones known as peptones and peptides. The second main function of pancreatic juice enzymes is the digestion of fat. So with the help of lipases, triglycerides, they are separated into glycerol and fatty acids. No doubt, bile secretion, liver secretion, which is known as bile, is also essential for the uh, emulsification, or you can say to prepare the fat molecules for the better action of the lipases. Similarly, the third type of enzyme is amylase, and it helps in the conversion of starch into maltose. Now comes towards the pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is basically the inflammation of pancreas, and it is caused by the autodigestion of the pancreatic tissues by its own enzymes. So basically we have seen that there are 6 types of principal enzymes present in the pancreatic juice, and these enzymes are released in inactive form in the duodenum, and where they are activated, and they act on the uh, different type of nutrients for their metabolism. Uh, However, in case of pancreatitis, what happens that these pancreatic enzymes basically they becomes activated in the pancreas, and ultimately they injure the uh, acinar, which are basically the smallest secreting portions of the pancreatic glands, and they are meant for the production of the pancreatic juice. Ultimately, the pancreas is inflamed. So this is basically the normal pancreas, and this is the inflamed one. So in case of normal, the enzymes are released into the duodenum, and in case of abnormal, enzymes basically accumulate in the injured acinar cells, and ultimately there will be inflammation. Regarding the causes, basically the etiology is the study of causes of any disease. These are the major causes. It can be due to gallstones, it can be due to trauma, it can be due to drug abuse or some sort of viral infections, and chronic alcoholism, biliary tract diseases, and high triglyceride levels. They are also one of the major causes. Regarding pathophysiology, physiology is very essential branch of biology, which helps in the understanding of mechanisms of living cells. And with the help of physiology, basically, we came to know the behavior of the body, whole body, and how external environment affect our body. It helps to understand how body works in health, and how it responds in case of diseases when something goes wrong. So it's useful for the development of new treatments and guidelines for maintaining human health. In case of pathophysiology, pathophysiology is basically disordered physiological processes associated with the disease or injury. So in pathophysiology, two things are important. First one is diagnosis. In case of diagnosis, we use Ranson's criteria, and we also have certain type of tests which helpful to understand the pancreatic functions, especially secretin stimulation test is conducted, glucose tolerance test is conducted, and 72-hour stool fat test is conducted. Because in case of pancreatitis, there will be excessive discharge of undigested fat in the stool, which is also known as steatoria. Regarding clinical findings, we have symptoms. Normally, abdominal pain is there, which also distend towards the backside, and nausea, vomiting, steatoria. Steatoria is basically the excretion of abnormal quantities of fat with the feces, owing to reduced absorption of fat by the intestine. So there are basically uh, the individual basically lose weight due to losses of fat with the fecal mass. So for this purpose, 72-hour stool fat test is conducted. In case of severe form, hypotension can be there. Oliguria is there. Oliguria is basically the scantiness of urine due to diminished secretions. The quantity of basically urine, the quantity of urine is reduced. Similarly, dyspnea is also there, and dyspnea, in case of dyspnea, there is the shortness of breath, and due to this, it is also known as air hunger. So these are some clinical findings associated with the pancreatitis. This is basically the Ranson criteria to classify the severity of the pancreatitis. At the admission or diagnosis stage, the following things are considered: age more than 55 years, and white blood cells count more than 1,600,000. Similarly, blood glucose level greater than 200 milligram per 100 ml. Lactate dehydrogenase enzyme should be more than 350 units per liter, and similarly aspartate transaminase levels should be more than 250 units per liter. So if these conditions are there, the individual is affected by the pancreatitis. Subsequently, the following tests are also conducted. For example, hematocrit decrease more than 10%, blood urea nitrogen increase of more than 5 milligram per deciliter. These things are indicating that the pancreatic juice enzymes are not working well, and ultimately the losses of nutrients are through the body secretions like urine and fecal mass. Similarly, serum calcium levels are also less than 8 milligram per milliliter. Regarding management, there are two options out there. First one is medical management. In case of, especially in case of acute pancreatitis, medical management becomes the first line step. Whereas in case of chronic, mostly dietary management works better. So in case of medical management, and if the problem is acute pancreatitis, oral feeding is reduced, oral feeding is withheld or stopped, and intravenous fluids are provided in the form of dextrose, pure amino acids, and similarly triglycerides. Likewise, there is administration of medicines like hydrogen receptor antagonists and somatostatin um, hormones. These are provided. In case of chronic pancreatitis, uh, pH of the intestine is managed with the help of different agents like antacids, which are used to reduce the acidity of the stomach. Similarly, hydrogen receptor antagonists and proton pump inhibitors, all these are used to reduce the acidity in the stomach. Similarly, insulin is administered for the glucose intolerance, or you can say for the hyperglycemia associated with the pancreatitis. Regarding nutrition management, first we will see the acute pancreatitis. The same guidelines are there. Withhold oral and enteral feeding, means tube feeding, and initiate the intravenous fluids. And if oral nutrition cannot be initiated in 5 to 7 days, start the tube feeding. Oral nutrition is started, provided easily digestible foods, low fat diet, 6 small meals rather than 3 regular meals, adequate protein intake, and increased calories. So these are the goals in case of dietary management and nutritional management. In case of chronic, provide oral diet as in acute phase. Uh, Further, if this is inadequate, then medication should be there to reduce the pain, and PERT technique can also be applied, in which we supplement the pancreatic enzymes, supplement fat soluble vitamins and vitamin B12, especially fat soluble vitamins, because uh, mainly the metabolism of fat is disturbed. So ultimately, fat soluble vitamins should be provided through the provided in the form of supplements. Types of pancreatitis, it can be acute, it can be chronic, and chronic basically uh, occurs in intermittently. Sometimes the individual is comfortable and don't feeling any sort of issues due to the pancreatitis, and sometimes the symptoms will be there. Uh, in this case, the functional and morphological losses are there. Basically, the morphology of the gland is affected. In case of acute pancreatitis, pancreas can sometimes heal without any impairment of function or any morphological change. In case of chronic pancreatitis, it is basically permanent and irreversible and damage of the pancreas with the evidence of chronic inflammation, fibrosis, and destruction of exocrine and endocrine tissues. Whereas in case of acute, the main indication is the sudden swelling and inflammation of the pancreas. And similarly, we can see disturbed levels of enzymes in the blood. Uh, in case of acute pancreatitis, a complete recovery of pancreas is possible after the episode. Regarding the incidence and prevalence, acute pancreatitis is more prevalent globally with 4 to 38 cases per 100,000. And in case of chronic, the prevalence is 4 cases per 100,000. So you can say more than 9 to 10 times patients are found with acute pancreatitis. And ultimately, there are 100,000 hospitalizations, whereas in case of chronic, almost 50% hospitalization per year are there as compared to the acute one. Death rate is more than 2,000 per year from the associated complications. It is the fourth most common cause of gastrointestinal related deaths, and usually more than 2.5 billion US dollars are spent on its treatment. In case of chronic pancreatitis, more than 90% of the patients are hospitalized on at least one occasion in their lifetime for the pain related to the chronic pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is basically the inflammation of the pancreas and is characterized by some symptoms like edema, which you have seen in the video tutorials that the fluid is removed, excessive fluid accumulated in the pancreas is removed through endoscopically. Similarly, cellular exudates are there and fat necrosis. These are basically the common signs and symptoms reflecting the pancreatitis or the inflammation of the pancreas. Uh, However, these can range from mild to severe ones. And in case of a mild uh, and self-limiting to severe with autodigestion, necrosis, and hemorrhage of the pancreatic tissues. There are almost 11 signs that could be measured during the first 48 hours of admission and that have the prognostic significance. You can further see the impact of treatment by uh, watching carefully, monitoring these 11 signs. By using these observations, one can determine the likely outcome of the hospitalizations. Surgical interventions also becomes essential in some cases, and again, it is classified into acute and chronic, the latter with pancreatic destruction so extensive that exocrine and endocrine functions are severely damaged, and maldigestion means improper digestion, and diabetes may result. So as a result of maldigestion, fat is not digested and ultimately expelled through the body from the body with through the fecal mass, and similarly the carbohydrates are not properly metabolized and ultimately diabetes will be there. The symptoms of pancreatitis can range from continuous or intermittent pains, means in some individuals they have continuous uh, pain, whereas in some individuals these can be in different episodes, and it also vary in intensity, uh, and also can be in severe upper abdominal part, or in some cases it may radiate to the backside. Symptoms may worsen with the ingestion of food, and especially the ingestion of fatty meals and heavy meals. Clinical presentations may also include nausea, vomiting, abdominal distension, and satiatoria. Severe cases are complicated by hypotension, oliguria, and dyspnea. There is extensive destruction of pancreatic tissues, and with subsequent fibrosis, enzyme production is damaged, and serum amylase and lipase may appear normal. However, absence of enzymes to aid in the digestion of food leads to satiatoria and malabsorption. Several tests are in use to determine the extent of pancreatic destruction. These are some common tests which are used for the diagnosis and prognosis of pancreatic functions. For example, secretin stimulation test, it measures the pancreatic secretions, particularly bicarbonates, in response to secretin stimulation. Secretin is basically injected, and ultimately the response in the form of pancreatic secretions is assessed. Glucose intolerance test helps in the assessment of endocrine function of the pancreas by measuring the insulin response to a glucose load. Similarly, 72-hour stool fat test is conducted to assess the exocrine function of the pancreas by measuring the fat absorption that reflects pancreatic lipase secretions. So one test, glucose tolerance test, is related to endocrine function, whereas 72-hour stool fat test is related to determine the endocrine function, the uh, info related to the enzymes. Regarding MNT, some foods and drinks are asked to avoid, and whereas some dietary modifications are suggested for the management of the disease. Alcohol use, smoking, body weight, diet, genetic factors, and medications all affect the risk of developing pancreatitis. Thus, diet modification has an important role after diagnosis. Dietary recommendations differ depending on whether the condition is acute or the chronic. Obesity appears to be a risk factor for the development of pancreatitis and an increased severity. So in this case, maybe initial goal will be to reduce the weight of the individual. Pain associated with acute pancreatitis is partially related to the secretory mechanism of pancreatic enzymes and the bile. Therefore, nutrition therapy is adjusted to provide minimal stimulation of these enzymes, because more the production of enzymes, more will be the pain. So the goal is to reduce the uh, production of these enzymes by removing the or minimizing the stimulating factors. In the past, the pancreas was put at rest. During acute attacks, all oral feeding is withheld and hydration is maintained intravenously. In less severe attacks, a clear liquid diet with negligible fat may be given in few days. The patient should be monitored for any symptoms of pain, nausea, and vomiting, and diet should be progressed as per tolerance to easily digested foods with the low fat content, and then advanced as tolerated. So, no fat diet is not recommended. Instead, low fat diet is suggested, and also split the fat intake into uh, 3 to 6 meals, rather than you are going to take 2 to 3 servings of fatty foods in a particular meal. Foods may be better tolerated if they are divided into 6 small meals. In case of severe acute pancreatitis, hypermetabolic catabolic state may occur, uh, and ultimately metabolic demands are similar to those of sepsis, means these will be increased. Sepsis is basically a generalized invasion of the body by pathogenic microorganisms or their toxins. Amino acids are released from the muscles and used for the gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is basically the production of glucose from other than carbohydrates, means like protein. And the main purpose of protein in the body is construction, growth and development, and especially to maintain the levels of hormones and enzymes, which are essential for the digestion and metabolism of the food. And in this case, the amino acids are used for the production of energy. So ultimately, uh, the muscular mass will be affected. The patient often exhibits signs of malnutrition, such as decreased serum levels of albumin, transferrin. Transferrin is basically uh, is a glycoprotein which is found in animals or vertebrates, and it is essential for the transport of iron through the blood plasma. And similarly, lymphocytes are there, and lymphocytes are basically uh, they have driven their name from the lymphatic system, and these are basically a type of white blood cells. Almost 18 to 44% of the circulatory blood cells, they are lymphocytes. Attention should be given to the nutrition regimen with the adequate protein in an effort to achieve the positive nitrogen balance. Oral nutrition must be further delayed when the acute illness persists longer than a few days, as evidenced by the persistent and recurrent elevation of serum amylase, continued abdominal pain. So basically, these are the two symptoms. If the amylase levels are high in the blood and abdominal pain is there, so oral nutrition should be withheld, and the nutrients should be provided in their pure form as intravenous. So the optimal route of nutrition in acute pancreatitis has been the subject of much controversy over the years. Failure to use the GIT in patients with AP may worsen the stress response and disease severity, leading to more complications and prolonged hospitalization. So it is suggested that EN, enteral nutrition or tube feeding, should be preferred for nutrition therapy rather than parenteral nutrition or intravenous nutrition. There is significant cost saving with the intrarenal nutrition and few septic complications. So these are basically the advantages which are associated with the tube feeding. Most patients with the acute pancreatitis have a return of bowel function within 2 to 3 days following an attack and can advance quickly from the intravenous fluids to diet. So it is always suggested that the preferred route should be the enteral feeding. Oral route should be used for the delivery of nutrients in the body. It is also essential to keep the bowel functioning. Because if we are not going to use this route for the delivery of nutrients, a lot of complications may happen later due to non-usage of bowel. Both parenteral and intrarenal nutrition are equally effective in terms of days to normalization of serum amylase, days to resumption of oral feeding, serum albumin levels, nosocomial infection. Nosocomial infection is basically hospitalized infection. Whenever you are in the hospital, there are more chances of infection, and clinical outcomes in patients with mild to moderate pancreatitis. But again, in case of parenteral nutrition, it is always costly, and it is not providing the nutrients in balanced amount. Though you are going to deliver the three macronutrients as well as the micronutrients in pure form, but a lot of dietary components like dietary fiber, these type of things will not be present, and ultimately they may trigger the constipation and other type of health issues. The favorable effect of either enteral or parenteral on patient outcome may be enhanced by the supplementation with the modulators of inflammation and systemic immunity. Aggressive nutrition support may include attempts to use the gastrointestinal tract, the location of feeding, and the composition of the formula determine the degree of pancreatic stimulation. Infusion into the duodenum eliminates the cephalic and gastric phases of exocrine pancreatic stimulations. So these are basically different type of tube feeding, and you are going to bypass the stomach and directly pour the stuff into the duodenum or jejunum. So subsequently, we can also use a jejunum. So ultimately, gastric phase of exocrine pancreatic stimulation is removed. Although various formulations have been used in pancreatitis, most studies have determined the relative merits of standard partially digested elemental or immune enhanced formulation. So still research is going on what type of food or formulations are more beneficial for such type of patients. Polymeric formulas infused at various sections of the gut stimulate the pancreas more than elemental and hydrolyzed formulas. So if the task is to avoid the stimulation, then elemental and hydrolyzed formulas will be preferred rather than polymeric formulas, because if they are infused, ultimately they will stimulate the pancreas for production of pancreatic juice. Close observation for patient tolerance are also essential. When the patient is allowed to eat, supplemental pancreatic enzymes may be needed to treat steatoria, means the excessive losses of fat through the fecal mass. So in this case, supplemental pancreatic enzymes means especially lipases, these becomes essential. In severe prolonged cases, parenteral nutrition may be necessary. Patients with mild to moderate stress can tolerate dextrose-based solutions, whereas patients with more severe stress require a mixed fuel system of dextrose and lipid to avoid complications of glucose intolerance. So what type of nutrients are to deliver through intravenous method or parenteral nutrition? It depends upon the stress level. So if the stress level is low or moderate, then dextrose-based solution is preferred. And in case of more severe stress, mixed type of solution means dextrose along with the lipid preparations should be given to avoid the complications of glucose intolerance. Lipid emulsion should not be included in a parenteral nutrition regimen if hypertriglyceridemia is the cause of pancreatitis. So if already triglyceride levels are high in the body, then lipid preparations should be avoided. So intravenously, dextrose as well as amino acids can be given. A serum triglyceride level should be obtained before parenteral nutrition with the lipids is initiated. So again, if triglyceride levels are high, then these lipid preparations should be avoided. These should not be the part of the parenteral nutrition. Lipids may be given to patients with triglyceride values less than 400 milligram per deciliter. So this is basically the cutoff value. If the value is more than 400 milligram per deciliter, then these will not be the part of parenteral nutrition. Because of the possibility of pancreatic endocrine abnormalities and relative insulin resistance, close glucose monitoring is warranted. So these are basically agents used to reduce the acidity.